Good afternoon, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your evening update on Tropical Cyclone Alfred at Category 2 status right now, offshore from the southeastern and south-central Queensland coastline, still raging and now a significant threat to the southeastern corners of Queensland, where a Category 2 strength tropical cyclone landfall can now be expected around the Brisbane area in about 4 days' time. A lot to get through in today's forecast update. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video while you're at it, but let's just get stuck straight into things now with Tropical Cyclone Alfred. Currently at Category 2 strength tropical cyclone status right over the top of Caddo Island, actually about 300 kilometres towards the northeast of Fraser Island. This cyclone here with winds around its centre up to 150 kilometres an hour, but it is weakening at this time. Plenty of rainfall also starting to build here on the radar imagery. You can see here outside of the Gympie and the Brisbane radar station some significant rainfall approaching the coastline at this time. It's not expected to get itself over the coastline, not for a while, considering that this cyclone is heading in that southeasterly trajectory at this time and pulling away from the Queensland coastline, but still it gives you an idea that this tropical cyclone, because of its slow-moving nature, it is going to be a wet system, and you can see plenty of thunderstorms now developing, which is a sign of things to come. This system, whilst it is in some very hostile conditions right now, and it looks absolutely awful on the satellite imagery and on the radar imagery, it doesn't really look like a tropical cyclone at all. It has better times ahead of it, and strengthening is expected to take place as we get into the early parts of this coming week. Like I said, that tropical cyclone landfall expected around the Brisbane area, Category 2 status is expected to occur as this tropical cyclone comes ashore there, and you can already start to see gale force winds starting to be observed along the southeastern Queensland coastline. Cape Morton Lighthouse 61 kilometres an hour out of the southeast and increasing. Double Island Point 63 kilometres an hour out of the southeast as well. They've peaked at wind gusts up to about 100 kilometres an hour there. And the northern tip of Fraser Island as well, we've seen reports of wind gusts there up to 130 kilometres an hour. Bang on the forecast, and I'm shocked that we don't have cyclone warnings in place for at the very least Fraser Island, considering we've got gale force winds developing there. Certainly has been pretty mismanaged by some of the forecasting agencies out there, but we're very confident with what's expected in store for this system right now. So let's dive into the forecast, and I have to preface this by saying that whilst this is just a forecast right now, I have great confidence in what I'm saying, and I do feel like the forecast is a pretty easy one now from Tropical Cyclone Alfred. I never thought that I'd say that with this system, considering it has just been such a problem to forecast, but let's just jump straight into it right now. You can see over the top of Caddo Island, expected to head towards the southeast over the coming couple of days. It's a slow moving system, but it will pick up the pace a little bit through tonight and into tomorrow. It is expected to get down just towards the north of Lord Howe Island by the looks of things. Lord Howe Island down in this general area here. And you can see this cyclone will then make its kind of U-turn. Well, the U-turn has been expected for the last couple of days, and that will happen sometime through Tuesday around lunchtime into Tuesday evening before it begins to draw towards the Queensland coastline through Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Better conditions ashore around the Queensland coastline as well, so we're expecting this tropical cyclone to begin steady intensification through Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Tropical cyclone approaching the Queensland coastline through Wednesday, through Thursday, and then into Friday as well. We're expecting a landfall sometime between Thursday night into Friday night. The Eastern Weather forecast expecting a landfall on the Sunshine Coast Friday night at about 10 o'clock in the evening, expecting that to be a little bit on the later side of things, and I also expect this landfall to be on the little bit more of the northern side of things, just with how the forecast has trended over the last couple of hours. It really looks like the landfall site at its absolute furthermost point north will be around the Sunshine Coast sort of area. I'm really not expecting this storm to pass ashore anywhere further north of the Sunshine Coast. Now, because this tropical cyclone will be almost more extratropical in nature as it gets itself closer to the coastline, so it's going to be a pretty poorly organised system. There'll be plenty of convection on the southern side of it, but it's definitely going to be a southern side dominated system. Wherever this system passes, anywhere immediately south and towards the southwest of this system will have the absolute worst and most hostile conditions to be contending with. So that includes Brisbane, the Gold Coast, if this landfall does come into fruition here. I think a worst case scenario would be a landfall on the Sunshine Coast, because that would bring the cyclone's destructive core ashore around the Brisbane area. And I'll get to that in a later part of this forecast update, but let's have a look at other forecast models. You can see the GFS has been calling for a very weird track from this tropical cyclone, calling for it to U-turn much earlier on and much closer to the coastline through Tuesday, and then that landfall expected late Wednesday night on Fraser Island. But it is important to note that the GFS has been trending a little bit further south and a little bit further later in terms of the rainfall, the landfall rather. So if we extrapolate that, we're expecting this landfall to happen much more in sync with the EastModBEF and the ICON forecast models as well, and the Access G3 forecast model, which is what the Bureau of Meteorology basis their forecasts off. You can see a stronger tropical cyclone expected to occur, but they're calling for a little bit more of a southerly based landfall here just outside of Lismore. Again, a very plausible scenario. We could be seeing a landfall anywhere between Hervey Bay down to Byron Bay, just to the north of Coffs Harbour in the south of Lismore by the looks of things, or just towards the outside of Lismore. That's kind of the southernmost point of the landfall site that we're expecting right now. But yeah, this tropical cyclone, it looks all but guaranteed that it's going to make a tropical cyclone landfall on the Queensland coastline. At the very least, it's going to be a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone, most likely going to be pushing into that Category 2 strength threshold by the looks of things, at least with what the forecast is suggesting right now. So it's definitely time, if you live in the southeastern corner of Queensland into the northeastern corner of New South Wales, it's definitely time now to be preparing for a Category 2 strength tropical cyclone impact. That includes Brisbane and the Gold Coast as well. A lot of people in the path of this system here, so definitely time to be preparing for that cyclone impact of Category 2 proportions. And this is historic. This will be history in the making if this tropical cyclone comes ashore as a Category 2 strength tropical cyclone. I'll get to the forecast and what you need to be doing to prepare for this cyclone at the end of this forecast update. Just in terms of these impacts, though, I'll quickly get this out of the way. You can see significant tropical cyclone impacts expected as this system makes ashore. This is a map of wind accumulation, so this is the strongest wind gust in the selected period of time, which is over 4 days between Tuesday and Saturday. And you can see as this system gets itself ashore for a landfall here, peak wind gusts expected up to about 150 kilometers an hour, and that's reciprocated between pretty much every major forecast model as well. You can see peak wind gusts immediately south of where this system is going to be making that landfall. The Eastern BEF expecting gusts up to about 140 kilometers an hour. The Icon forecast model has been calling for wind gusts a little bit stronger than that actually, but along the coastline up to about 150 kilometers an hour. And the GFS forecast model, which is notoriously a low baller in terms of wind speeds and intensity, still calling for those wind gusts up to about 120, 130 kilometers an hour here and there. You can extrapolate that once again and predict 150 kilometer an hour wind. So what that all means is that wind gusts along the coastline will be as high as 150 kilometers an hour, and that's pretty much for any location south of Hervey Bay through the Sunshine Coast, especially for locations around Brisbane and the Gold Coast along the coast there, and then down through Byron Bay, Lismore, down to Grafton and Coffs Harbour. Anywhere along the coastline there, like I've just mentioned, wind gusts up to 150 kilometers an hour can be expected. Brisbane and the Gold Coast will likely be slightly windier than the Brisbane metro area. I'm expecting wind gusts in both locations, though, to top out at about 110 kilometers an hour. For comparison, that's probably about the windiest severe thunderstorm that you'll get in either of those locations there, but the difference to this is it's not going to be sustained over 3 or 4 minutes. It's going to be sustained over many hours, in fact potentially up to 12 hours, considering the size of this cyclone and the fact that it is going to be a slow moving one as it gets itself ashore. In terms of rainfall as well, that's another very significant impact possibility that we've been talking about for the last couple of days. Rainfall accumulations over a 4-day period as this system makes its landfall or approach to the coastline between Tuesday out towards Saturday. You can see accumulations here, but supported by all major forecast models up to about 400 or 500 millimeters along the coastline, with higher accumulations expected into the mountainous areas through the Gold Coast hinterland and then down into the mountainous areas adjacent to the northeast New South Wales coastline, where falls there could reach up to 750 millimeters, and we can't be writing off isolated spot falls up to 1,000 millimeters at this time. Likely to be some really significant flooding through some of the rivers here, north of Taree, through Kempsey, Coffs Harbour, Grafton, the Clarence River especially expecting to be inundated with some significant floodwaters, and Lismore, comparative flooding to the floodwaters that blew through Lismore back in, I believe it was August or late August 2024 last year. Some significant flooding expected in the Lismore area as well. Again, considering this tropical cyclone will more likely than not be on its way out as it makes a crossing of the coastline, the majority of the rainfall and significant impacts will be dominating the southern side of the system. So wherever the low pressure system crosses the coast, which right now, as per all official forecasts, is looking between Brisbane down towards Byron Bay, that's kind of where the ground zero is expected to be. But like I said, it could be anywhere further north of that up to about Hervey Bay, and then anywhere further south of that down to probably Coffs Harbour at this time. But we'll narrow that forecast down nicely through tomorrow morning and then into future forecast updates as well. But with the landfall currently being predicted around the Brisbane and the Gold Coast area, anywhere further south that is expected to receive some really significant tropical cyclone conditions from this system, and those are the really strong wind gusts, the really heavy rainfall. So all in all, it actually looks like the northeast of New South Wales is going to get thrashed with this system more so than the southeast of Queensland is, which makes this an even rarer system, to be honest. It's very, very rare New South Wales receives tropical cyclone impacts, and I don't think a Category 2 strength landfall or close passes ever happened to New South Wales before, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section down below. But yeah, this would be historic for Lismore, Grafton, Coffs Harbour, with the most significant cyclone impacts expected in those areas. Now, of course, the forecast can and will change, and any wobbles in the track will be ironed out over the coming couple of days. We're not going to be 100% sure where this system makes its landfall until at least Tuesday night, when this system makes its turn back towards the Queensland coastline. Then it'll be very clear where this system is expected to make its landfall, but if it turns earlier, we'll be seeing that landfall further north north up on the Sunshine Coast. If it turns a lot later, we'll be seeing a landfall down in towards New South Wales. Right now, your guess is as good as mine, but I'm expecting a landfall somewhere around the Brisbane or the Gold Coast area, with the scope of possibilities being as far north as Hervey Bay and as far south as Coffs Harbour, as I have mentioned. Cyclonic conditions expected anywhere between those locations as well. Anywhere north of Hervey Bay, so Bundaberg, Gladstone, Agnes Water, you should be fine right now. Fraser Island expecting cyclonic conditions to continue throughout the next couple of hours as well, but definitely further south, Noosa, Maroochydore, Redcliffe, Brisbane, the Gold Coast, and then further in towards New South Wales, so Lismore, Yamba, Grafton, Coffs Harbour, and even as far south as Port Macquarie, expect tropical cyclone conditions. That leaves me nicely on into the how to prepare for this system here, and to be honest, there's not a lot you can do. 150km/h winds will cause some really significant damage regardless of what happens. Homes down in the northeast of New South Wales and the southeast of Queensland are not built for that, and that's just the fact of the situation right now, is that a lot of these places, this will be unprecedented winds and they are not built for it at all. So there will be extensive damage and devastation, and unfortunately there's really not much that you can do about it. But to prepare adequately for this system, make sure you're strapping things down outside right now, making sure that trampoline's packed away in a protected part of the backyard or strapped down, putting covers on cars as well to protect them from flying debris, especially Monday and Tuesday. You want to be doing that, pruning up the garden, getting someone out to do that professionally today or tomorrow at the absolute latest, or doing it yourself throughout the rest of this weekend. Those winds will pick up from about Tuesday night into Wednesday morning onwards, so realistically you probably want all of your preparations done before Wednesday morning, but you can still have Wednesday and maybe even Thursday morning to prepare adequately for this system as well. Ensure that you have sandbags on standby, especially if you live in a flood prone location as well, or you're expecting significant coastal inundation, because keep in mind these waves along the coastline will be up to 20 feet. In fact, we've had significant wave heights up to 50 feet. That's 15 meters offshore from the Cape Morton Lighthouse. So again, some huge wave heights have been reported from this system, and whilst they will drop because this system is heading further south and weakening still, we're still expecting some really significant swells and coastal inundation as well, and that's not even to mention the flooding that can be expected into the northeast of New South Wales. I'm going to cover all of the preparations and what you should be doing, and I'll give you a checklist over on Facebook as well, closer to the date of the landfall. We're still not 100% sure, and I don't really want to be making people as far north as Hervey Bay prepare for a tropical cyclone impact if it's unlikely at this time, because again, a lot of the preparations that some people might be taking could be just futile and really not necessary at all. So this time we'll just give it another couple of days, or give it another day, I'd say, until we actually make some preparations. But if you do live in a really vulnerable position along the coastline or in an exposed or flood-prone location, then it's a good idea to be preparing now for this tropical cyclone. You'll have maximum time to prepare adequately, and it is much better to be safer than to be sorry. But if you live in the suburbs around Brisbane, you can probably give it another 24 hours until you really start preparing and focusing on the preparations for this tropical cyclone. Same deal with the Gold Coast and even into the northeast of New South Wales as well. And the good thing is, if it goes in towards New South Wales, it'll probably come ashore about 12 hours later than what we're initially expecting, so sometime Friday. Still a lot of time to prepare. This tropical cyclone here is causing me a lot of concerns. It's causing the forecasting community an absolute headache as well. I mean, it's just been such an unpredictable system, and that's why there's been so much chopping and changing with the forecast. But right now, we're very confident with this tropical cyclone landfall. I'm probably a little bit more confident than what some other agencies are. I'm really expecting this system to come ashore around the Brisbane or the Gold Coast area, or just towards the south of that, which would be good news because that would spare both Brisbane and the Gold Coast from the absolute worst case scenario here. But at this time, I'm expecting some landfall to occur in the southeastern corner of Queensland, or the very, very tippy top northeastern end of New South Wales from Tropical Cyclone Alfred, and it will likely be a high-end Category 1 or a weak Category 2 strength tropical cyclone as it comes ashore. So again, some really significant and some historic impacts can be expected. Like I said, those wind gusts are absolutely no joke and will cause some extensive devastation. What's also really concerning me is, have a look at these. If I turn the radar imagery off here, you can see some of these thunderstorms really begin to develop here on the southern side of this system, and they weren't really around this morning. So convective energy coupled with some warmer sea temperatures that this system is now headed into, and some more favourable wind shear conditions as well, is giving way to some good thunderstorms beginning to develop, and that's the first signs of intensification here. This tropical cyclone, whilst it will continue to weaken over the next couple of hours, it is expected to do that U-turn, head over some more favourable conditions, and once it gets itself jammed up against the Queensland, New South Wales coastline, it will have some really favourable conditions to intensify quite quickly. So Again, Tropical Cyclone Alfred, better days are ahead for this system, and that is a concerning outlook for the southeast of Queensland and into the northeast of New South Wales. Again, any questions or comments on this system, feel free to head over to my Facebook page. I'm going to be releasing very frequent updates on this system as it approaches the Queensland coastline. Plenty more updates to come as well along the CyclonesOZ channel, and tomorrow I'll have definitive answers on where this system is going to be going in for a landfall. By Wednesday, we're going to know exactly where the landfall is going to be as well, so subscribe to the channel for the latest and best information that you can get, the most up-to-date information, and check out the Facebook page as well for regular and frequent helpful updates. But yeah, tomorrow we'll be telling you exactly who needs to prepare and what they need to prepare for this tropical cyclone. We're going to go really into depth with this. But yeah, right now still a little bit uncertain, but the certainty is certainly really eroding right now, and we're becoming quite concerned and much more certain with what the forecast is. And let me tell you, it's not looking pretty for the southeast of Queensland and especially the northeast of New South Wales. Again, for everybody in the path of this system, make sure you are staying safe, stay cool, calm and collected as well in the sights of this tropical cyclone. I know it's probably a very daunting sight to have something like this just offshore from your home. It's definitely quite a concerning sight, that's for sure, and I really do feel for everybody up in the southeastern corners of Queensland. That must be very concerning indeed to have Tropical Cyclone Alfred as such a powerful system just offshore knocking on your doorstep. But yeah, stay calm. It's the best way to prepare for a tropical cyclone. What will be, and there's plenty of measures that you can be taking to prepare for this tropical cyclone right now. That is all from me today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and again, I could not run the show without them, and their support is much appreciated. Again, I cannot thank them enough for the financial support that they give the CyclonesOZ channel. It's the reason why I've got access to all of the fancy forecasting software over here. But that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.